Hello, my name is Lakshmi Chella, and I'm the managing attorney at the Chella Law Firm, and here to give you the weekly critical updates about how COVID is impacting employers and foreign workers. I'm giving it just a second to get our participants up and going, and then we will get started. Almost 1.3 million people worldwide are impacted by the COVID-19 virus. In the US, it's approximately 338,000 people that are impacted, and unfortunately that number keeps getting worse with about 10,000 deaths. Our prayers to the people that are impacted by this, horrible virus. And we hope that people are staying safe and abiding by all the advice by CDC and your local government on safe distancing and trying to make sure we can in some way curb the virus going forward. But unfortunately, even with this travesty, we all have to deal with all the issues that impact our life, which, for employers of foreign workers, it's the immigration side. So what we hope to do is every week provide some highlights of how the USCIS and various other government agencies are reacting to the shutdowns and, the challenges that impact immigration, during this time period. So first, and as we go through this, please make sure if you've got any questions that, you ask those, and we will try to answer them as we go along. So first, we're going to recap some of the issues that we addressed last week. We're going to update on closures and policies and guidance. So that is the agenda for today. So, recap. So one of the first things we talked about last week was employers' compliance in given the challenging business environment. So the employers cannot bench the employee. That means, the employee remains active, but the employer is not paying payroll. What the employer can do is, if their business is impacted and they no longer need the resources, they've got to terminate and comply with the offering of airfare to their employees for a one-way ticket home. They can file an amendment petition, amending their employee status from that of full-time to part-time. And lastly, that if there is a change in the work site, they've got to adhere to the new rules regarding notice and compliance. The employee's options we discussed last week is, to take personal leave, assuring that it's consistent with the employer's policy on personal leave. There is the 60-day grace period, and we also discussed the compelling circumstances where the employee can file for EAD and what the risks are in each of these options. We highlighted how the USCIS given the challenge with remote workers has, added greater flexibility into the I-9 requirements and LCA postings, as well as the PERM postings. And finally, we discussed F1 international student updates with, what notifications and process they have to go through, given the three scenarios. One being if, the school no longer has, classes at the premises, but they've shifted to all online, what the repercussions are and what the school needs to do. Secondly, if the employee is the F1 student is overseas and their classes are online, what the updates are and changes in relation to the ability to do that. And then finally, for those cases where their classes may not be full-time because some classes, like for example, a lab, it's impossible to do that online. So what would be the implications of that? And if you are interested in listening to the details of this, we're recording our weekly sessions so that it's available as a reference to you online. And so you'll be able to find that on our YouTube channel. So please check it out so you can, if there's some topic you want to listen to again or get some clarification, you can do that. We also have resources. We've got the COVID-19 resources for Cello Law, and you can, avail yourself of that as well. So now for this week's updates. We're going to address the updates for F1 students, USCIS procedural updates, J1, H2Bs, H1B, and those who are here on a visa waiver. So first, for those students who are overseas, but they were planning on, barring any issues related to travel, that, with the travel bans and everything else, what the USCIS said the students could do is they are permitted to enter the United States for their graduation, like I said, assuming that there's no travel ban, and leverage their 60-day grace period to attend graduation and return home. They have not, they're still discussing whether F1 students can apply for optional practical training while they're abroad, and we'll keep you updated on any issues related to that. And finally, for those students who were supposed to enter in the spring and they've got to defer their attendance, they can do that, and the school would just need to notate the SEVIS with the information accordingly. Next, for J1s. So J1, there's been a great deal of flexibility for medical professionals. I mean, clearly, because we are in such challenging times with this pandemic, they're trying to get as many health professionals as possible. So usually J1 physicians are only allotted 7 years on that program. So they're allowing for extensions beyond the 7 years. The J1s would just have to go through and apply as they typically do for extensions for those 7 years. For non-J1 physicians, the interview procedures, of course, because of the consulates not taking, interviews right now, they are saying that there's no refunds for anyone that has applied for a J1. They're going to hope to reschedule as soon as it's feasible. And there has been some discussion if a video interview can take place, and they're reviewing that right now, and there's no guidance currently allowing for video interviews for consular processing. Now the H1B and H2B visas. There are some that lobbied for an extension on the registration or cap for H1Bs, especially given a lot of people that were offered a job are no longer offered a job. And we highlighted some of those questions last week. So if you have questions about, and you didn't attend our discussion last week, and you have questions relating to whether you applied and yet the offer has been rescinded, please take a look at that and listen to, the guidance we provided. The H-2B, these are individuals that come for a, it's either a one-time occurrence or it's seasonal work. And if you recall, the allowed number, the quota had been increased last year. Well, this year, and it's broken down into 2 periods. So the new 35,000 that's allocated is on hold. So they're not going to release those additional H-2Bs. And it's partly due to the fact that the unemployment in the US is now 6.6 million. And so they are hoping that US workers will be able to avail themselves of those jobs. You can, for those who have applied for the April, in the April timeframe, those H-2Bs, of course, will still be honored. And they are asking, they said for those people who need a deferment, they are allowing for that. And the reason is for H-2Bs, there are very specific issues relating to the wages you need to pay. And so, employers would still have to adhere to that if the H-2Bs come in and, there's a problem with the business. I have a question. New H-1B numbers are out and much higher. Overall, it looks like 1 to 3. Would this number be higher or lower for advanced degrees since there were more advanced degrees registrations than regular? We were, quite frankly, really surprised at the overwhelming applications this year. And that's partly due to the fact that a lot of the people applied before really the impact of the COVID-19 issue. But even with that, with 85,000 allotted, you don't really know. We tried to analyze those who were selected to see if, really there was any greater selection of master's degree. And, so far, at least with our analysis for our work, we haven't found that. Now, for individuals who have come to the US on a visa waiver, there are a certain number of countries that don't need a visa to enter the United States for as temporary visitors. And they're permitted to stay here for 90 days. Typically you cannot extend that, or you cannot change your status if you enter as a visa waiver. But because of the travel ban and many airlines not operating to certain countries, a lot of people on visa waiver are now finding themselves trying to figure out what their options are. And I know that there's only a few, I think it's Raleigh-Durham Airport, New York Airport, Newark. Only a few airports have been reported to allow people to apply for what's called satisfactory departure, which would allow them to stay an additional 30 days. But we have found that there are other airports that are doing this as well. So what you would do is contact the CBP or Deferred Inspection Office, either at your point of entry, or you can even sometimes contact them at your nearest airport, because sometimes it's difficult to travel to that airport at your port of entry. And the email that they will typically give you is I-94, whatever the abbreviation of the airport is, at cbpdhs.gov. And the procedures for that are that you would need to have proof that the airline canceled your flight. That's one of the criteria. There's an application window that varies. Some airports say that you can only apply, 3 days before you depart. Some it's 14, some it's 30. So you'd have to contact the airport. And what would typically happen is you call the CBP or deferred inspection number you can Google. And what they will do is tell you the email address, I-94, whatever the abbreviation of the airport is. And you would send them an email, and then you get an email back with the application for satisfactory departure, and also what their requirements are. Most airports are allowing individuals to email the application in. There are certainly a few that require in-person submission. We have a question. When would the second H1B lottery taken, H1 lottery, if they are able to fill the 85,000 slots that are allotted for H1Bs per year, then there would not be a second lottery. It's only, when they initially talked about that, it was only if there weren't enough applications to meet the 85,000 cap. And with the surge in applications this year, I don't think that that's going to be a problem. So we probably will not see another H1B lottery window this year. So these are the H1B updates. There's some process updates for the USCIS in dealing with some of the challenges that we have now. So the application support centers are closed, and I think the field offices are closed, and they initially said that, what they're going to do with some applications that require biometrics is they're going to, for those that are using, filing for, like, for example, an H4 EAD, and it's pursuant to an extension, not an initial filing, but an extension, they're going to use the biometrics of the previous filing. So for those that are filing an initial petition, they'll have to wait for a rescheduling of their biometrics. But for those that are filing for extensions, they are going to use the previous biometrics. The processing time is currently taking 4 to 10 months. We suspect that those that will not have to go through the biometrics for their extensions may be able to see a quicker processing of their EAD. USCIS response for extensions. The good news is the first quarter statistics of 2020 show that the denial rates and RFE rates have gone down just a little bit. Not substantially, but just a little bit. But what the USCIS has said that if an issuance date of the notice of action is between March 1st, 2020 and May 1st, 2020, initially they said that with RFEs and notice of intent to denies, that they would give a 60-day extension for those responses. They are now extending that to not only RFEs and notices of intent to deny, but for other applications as well. And any appealable decision within the Administrative Appeals Office. So there are 60 days extensions that are allowed because they understand that some law firms are not operating. It may be difficult to get the information that's requested. We have another question. Let me see if I can pull that up. No, there's no updates on Social Security offices for F1 students that want to apply for Social Security numbers. We're keeping track on that, but we haven't heard that there's been any updates. I even looked on updates last night hoping that there would be some updates about the CPT and OPT, but nothing so far, no updates so far. The legal battle will be going on, but some courts are closed. So, and we know that like for example, the Supreme Court's not hearing any cases. So I think the likelihood of anything being resolved will be very questionable at this point. Public charge. We've had a lot of questions about people asking if they can obtain the disaster relief or get unemployment insurance during this time period. And so, yes, these are exempt from the public charge of inadmissibility. As you know, that earlier this year, the USCIS outlined how certain types of benefits, public benefits, would actually be problematic for any immigration benefit you're trying to seek. But they've clearly said that the benefits that are exempted are emergency medical relief, disaster relief, national school lunch programs, foster care and adoption, student and mortgage loans, energy assistance, food pantries, homeless shelters, Head Starts. So, you know, that shouldn't be the concern, but you must be weary. I mean, if you are in H1 status, you've got to make sure your employer terminates you. And so you're in that 60-day grace period. And so during that time, you can avail yourself of unemployment, but you can't be employed by your employer and he's not paying you. And then, you know, you're asking for unemployment benefits. You know, it's the whole idea of maintaining status on an H1 is making sure that, you know, you are being paid by your employer. So that's one of the things that I would caution you on. So office closures, we're going to talk quickly about office closures. USCIS stated there was a suspension of in-person services at the application support centers, field offices, asylum offices, and it's now been extended till May 4th. And that may be extended even longer given, you know, just depending on how we are able to control the spread of the virus. But that is a moving target. So for now, it's till May 4th. But emergency services are still available. The National Visa Center cautions that they have, you know, have reduced staffing. So they're not going to be able to really ask a question. I think somebody raised their hand. If they could, on the chat or question answer, if you could just, let me see if I can pull it. Okay, there we go. Oh, hi, Steve Rao. We've got a representative from North Carolina. It's great to have you listening in and taking care of all the things that you're doing in Morrisville. Thrilled to have you here, Mayor Pro Temp. Will there be, the question is, will there be any effect to F4 visa dates? Do you mean, you must mean either F1, F2, or H4? Can you clarify, Teja? And so the USCIS, the National Visa Center, you know, for standard questions, they're still operating, you know, applications are being processed, but they may not be able to get to your questions. And there are absurd long waits for any phone inquiries. The embassies and consulates, routine appointments and services are suspended for right now. There, you know, like I said, there hasn't been any issues related to, you know, I mean, they haven't clarified whether they would allow video conferencing. So, you know, that may not be a possibility, but hopefully look forward to that. If this continues, they may have to do that. And the machine readable visa fee is valid for 1 year of payment. And then for emergency appointment instructions, there are online resources. And Sumple from Richmond wanted a link to the H1B related video. Yes, you can find that on our website. If you go to the YouTube channel, go to YouTube and type in Chella Law, and you should be able to, you know, process forward. Are there any plans of closing your offices? No, we're not. We are fully functional, and we are taking turns working remotely and having teams work, on alternate days. So there's even less people at the office. Everyone has, we've got, safe distancing policies in place, masks, Lysol, disinfectant wipes, gloves. So we are moving forward. We recognize that immigration filings are really important to our clients. And unfortunately, there is no other way to file except in person. So not only are we still open, but I think there's a number of us that were working through the weekend. So I think it's actually, we're working harder because there's so many questions that people have. There you go, Simple. We've posted up where the webinar links are and so forth for the resources that we're putting together. There's another question. Are there any changes, benefits, and exemptions granted with regard to perm recruitment? Yes, in response to COVID. And if you look at our resources and look at our YouTube channel from last week, we actually, there's an additional extension in place for perm recruitment. And there's also some information regarding to perm posting. So you would be able to do that. So I think somebody had a question about their mother who's here on a visitor visa, but her flight was canceled. So you'd be able to apply for an extension of that. And I would put in information relating to, that the cancellation was due to, the fact that there are no flights available to go out. You'll get some notification from your airline. I'd include that in your extension. Will there be any effect to the bulletin dates, especially family-based category? Not that we know of. I mean, that's kind of a separate, there are these processes and petitions, and there's the allocation. Unless there are a number of people that stop filing, there may be effect to the visa bulletin with related to permanent residence, but otherwise not. If my previous application was denied, a new application is submitted and filled with new biometrics need to be collected for the new application, or can the previous biometrics be applied? They're only given the exemption for biometrics for extensions right now. So I don't think that it would relate to a denial. The question is, we have professors still signing contracts to begin August. Just getting CAP exempt petitions started now. Will suspension of premium processing, is there really any chance of getting them an H1B to start working in August? You can still ask for expedited processing. And so I don't think you'd be able to do that now, but I would suspect that given sometime this summer, you would be able to say that, and at that point, we'll have a better assessment of whether, like we've got this under control. And so some of the offices are operational and they reopen premium processing. If they do not, and the school is, is the school going to have regular classes? Are they going to have online classes? How is that going to operate? And if the answer is the school is going to have regular classes, then I think you would have a strong case for asking for an expedite on your H1B CAP exempt petition. If a person is working on OPT and get not selected this year, OPT is expiring soon but cannot leave the country due to travel restrictions, then what could we do? Last week we had some updates on emergent circumstances for F1 students. So you can take a look at that. There are situations where if you can't depart, right now you have the 60-day grace period. What they had suggested Okay, sorry about that. I knocked over the plug. I didn't realize it when I was sitting, and so my computer died. But somebody raised their hand, and so I'm trying to see where the question is, and I don't see any open questions. Somebody raised their hand. Brittany, did you have a question? Does anyone else have any questions? Like I said, I'm sorry that didn't realize I knocked over the plug. Please send me your question via chat window or question answer area. Oh, that was by accident. Okay. So that's the recap of what we have so far for the COVID updates. Like I said, it is a dynamic process. We keep getting updates every week. And so we'll have our next session next Monday at 11 o'clock. And in between, please check out our COVID section on our website. Look at, I have another question. Okay, here we go. If the H1B candidate loses job and does not find anything within 60 days, looking at when all the flights are not operating, what will happen in such a case? Well, either you file for another status like student status. You can also file for maybe a visitor visa during that time frame. And as I said, because this is so dynamic, people keep thinking, or at least the USCIS keeps thinking it's going to end very soon. So we don't have a lot of guidance on, long-term solutions. So for right now, if your 60 days is going to expire and you've been terminated, then your only chance is to file for a change of status to either F1 or H4 or visitor visa during that 60-day grace period, because that grace period, you're in a period that's authorized by the Attorney General, so you are eligible for a change of status during that period. But we will keep you posted if we hear anything else. And again, I want to thank you all for coming. Email us at info@cellolock.com if we didn't answer your question or if you have anything specific. For those that were asking a lot of questions about our previous, please check out our YouTube channel at cellolaw.com. We're going to continue to post additional information there on remote employment, specifically, digging down a little bit deeper into the immigration issues that are relating to what's happening with the COVID virus. Stay safe, safe distancing, and I look forward to talking to you all next week. I'm glad somebody said that they found it very helpful. Very good. That's what our goal is, to make sure we disseminate information to not only our client base, but all the people that are impacted. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye. Until next week.